Hello and you're welcome to the Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. Is Elon Musk's recent behaviour hurting Tesla sales, and might it land him in even more trouble, up to and including personal arrest warrants in some European countries? And how long can this current tension between what he says and his top-down content rules on X, formerly known as Twitter, last? How long can that last against what the law says and the way regulation is going? Well, we're going to talk about this. JJ Clark, who produces this show, is in studio with me. This JJ is getting to an extreme level, I think. Some of the stuff that Elon Musk is talking about, he's amping up his concern over what he says is anti-white narrative on social media and within governments. But it's now actually starting, we think, to hurt sales of his vehicles, of Tesla cars. And I posted a link, ironically, on X about a week ago, which described how one European company called Rossmann, which is a very large drugstore, pharmacy store in Europe, they're cancelling their order for Tesla cars. So it's starting to hurt his other business, Tesla, what he's actually doing on X at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm interested here because his mission statement is a sort of free speech battle that he's, self-defined at the very beginning of taking over X. And now his ability to own X might be under threat because of this. Because he's eventually, if he keeps going like this and his other businesses are negatively affected, then he's going to have to sell X or shift, ownership in Europe.
Yeah, that could be. I wrote a piece at the beginning of this year with two possible outcomes for X in Europe. One was that he was going to get a massive fine, Elon Musk, and that he would have to change the way he runs X altogether, including the likelihood that he would have to rehire very many of the trust and safety people in Dublin that he fired when he bought the company. That's one possibility. The other possibility, I think, is that he just takes X out of Europe. He pulls it from the European market because it's too much hassle. According to what he says he believes and the hill that he says he's willing, metaphorically speaking, to die upon, which is an extreme version of free speech, a very American, and even by American standards, quite an extreme version of free speech there, quite an unregulated form of free speech that won't fly in Europe in the long term, in a continent where if you deny the Holocaust in some countries, that's a criminal offence.
Yeah, it's arrestable in Germany.
Yeah, so there's just a different standard in Europe than there is in the US. And so in that context, he either sells Twitter and it goes back to what it was before, or he completely changes it, goes back to what it was before, or he just pulls the service altogether from Europe. That's what I think the end game is. But in the meantime, I was very interested to hear an interview with the former head of Twitter in Ireland, Sinead McSweeney. She was on Brendan O'Connor's show on Radio 1 over the weekend, and she was there to talk about a lot of stuff. But Brendan started probing about what it was like when she was there under Elon Musk. And if you recall, that ended badly between them. Elon Musk, when he took over, he sent out this email demanding that people respond to it by saying that they were on board with his new rules, and if they didn't, that he would know that they didn't want to work on Twitter. She didn't, and they cut her off. The company cut her off from email and other systems. She took action on that. Her position was restored, and then she left the companies a little bit after that. But what she said was that she said a few interesting things. First, she said that the Twitter, she knew it was dead. She referred to the death of Twitter. So she doesn't regard X as being the Twitter kind of before. The other interesting thing I thought she said was that, and it was a very fair point, was that a lot of the issues that we talk about as being problematic around Twitter and X and social media in general, because it's a wider issue than just X, are still issues that are unresolved among ourselves. We talk about social media companies, and X is an extreme example of this, being responsible for types of speech and content. But actually a good portion of the tension there is within ourselves over what we ourselves regard as being hate speech or extreme speech. And she said that she used to sit in offices with ministers and with politicians and regulators, and she used to plead with them, look, please tell us exactly what you want us to outlaw according to the law. We will follow the law. But they never wanted to do that. They wanted to leave it up to the social media companies themselves. And it was kind of a cop-out, and we still are copping out a bit.
Yeah, but isn't there a sort of sense from the social media companies that they do this kind of thing where they shrug their shoulders and say, we aren't publishers, we're platforms.
Oh, yeah.
That's putting your hands up in the air and saying, not my problem as well.
Well, it sort of is. On that issue, I actually happen to agree with them. I think the argument that some journalists use and some old-fashioned politicians use, that social media platforms are really publishers and should be treated as publishers, is a completely out-of-date argument. And that's closer as an analogy to arguing that Eircom or Virgin Media, because they run broadband operations, should be responsible for the content that's on them. That used to be the orthodox thinking when I started reporting on tech. When broadband and internet services first came into Ireland, piracy was the big problem. That was the big scandal at the time. And the orthodox conventional wisdom from the anti-piracy guys in music and video was to go after the broadband companies because they were the ones facilitating the privacy. Now, the same thinking kind of applies to this idea that social media firms are publishers, that they should be held to account because they're distributing the material, they're distributing the defamation or the harmful content or the hate speech. And that publishers would be sued into oblivion if they did so. But they're completely different because a social media company is something at massive scale. It's a little bit more like it has some control over the content. But to argue that it should hire 100,000 sub-editors to go over every single post
but that's still negating responsibility, and it's saying because I'm a bigger guy, I shouldn't have to control my limbs as much as a smaller. Know what I mean?
I think we've come a long way towards trying to square that circle with European legislation, in particular, Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act. So where you have hate speech or extreme content or disinformation or misinformation that is dangerous, the social media companies can now be held responsible for that. There are certain ways in which they can defend themselves. If something was published and they took it down, for example, immediately, that is usually a solid defence.
Yeah, and I would accept that. I think that's fair.
It's only in a situation, I think, where and I think X is getting close to this because the European Commission has opened an investigation to X around this. X seems to take a policy point of view where they do not share the EU's value system in terms of what constitutes hate speech or extreme speech, extreme content. And we see that with Elon Musk day in and day out. He's slagging off Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister at the moment.
Yes.
He's slagging off the UK legal system.
Yeah,
which has strong
police system that he's describing.
Well, because the UK over the riots that happened over the last 10 days,
stabbings, yeah,
and people shared insightful posts, and they've been arrested for those insightful posts as per the law. And Elon Musk is taking absolute solid aim at that, saying that it's some sort of a Nazi system or it's some sort of a Soviet system. And it's clear, because he owns the company, it's very clear that informs the policy direction of X, of Twitter. And that's where he's going to run into trouble in the UK and in the European Union. And I mean, we had in the Guardian newspaper this week, we had one of Twitter's former bosses, a UK British guy, writing that the only way to arrest this with Elon Musk is to issue warrants around him personally, to hold him personally responsible.
And how much of this is, for example, posting insightful stuff about the riots in and around the Southport stabbings? The damage is already done, even if you put up a post inciting some sort of violence and then it's taken down straight away, it still hits eyeballs. Like, it's people still see it if it's up there for 5 seconds, 5 minutes. And there's no guardrail if, you're setting the guardrails, it's your playground. If you're the person in control of all that and you say, well, actually, Keir Starmer, is guilty of this there's two-tier policing at a different protest, and he's sort of having this war of words. I don't, because he's been like this for so long. I wonder where the edge is. Is it going to stop, or is it someone is going to stop him? In terms of, is he going to be corralled in some way in some sort of legal framework?
That's a very good question. Whether a legal framework will do it, I think it probably will. I think the nature of European law is that it's slower than American law. But I think once it is set up and running, or the GDPR or other, cross-national laws, I think it's very firm. And I think the big companies pay a lot of attention to it. I just don't think we've got to that point of enforcement yet with the Digital Services Act and with hate speech, where someone like Elon Musk really has to pay attention. But don't forget, Elon Musk is a guy who almost always backs down when it really comes down to it. The Turkish kind of strongman leader, Erdogan, ordered X 18 months ago to remove posts and content from opposition politicians, and Twitter did it. And Elon Musk was challenged about this by some of his free speech associates in the States. And he castigated them, and he said, well, what did you want us to do? Did you want us to have Twitter kicked out of Turkey? So it's quite clear that he actually is not a guy who will completely see his principles through to the end. He's a guy who takes things up to the absolute edge, and at the 11th hour back down. We saw that when he tried to back out of buying Twitter as well. He agreed a price that was way too high. He then went on this ludicrous round of excuses as to why he wasn't going to buy it, because there were too many spam bots or whatever. And then when he saw that he couldn't win, he just backed down. And
with that, I suppose, are the UK politicians make a mistake in getting in verbal arguments with him via posts on X rather than putting a firm hand and saying, hey, listen, this is where the line is?
I think some of them are and some of them aren't. I think to get involved in a spat on X, it only benefits you if the closer you are to the fringe, the more it benefits you, left or right, because you don't really care what 75% of the population thinks of you. You really just want to shore up your 15 to 20%. That's as true on the right as it is on the left.
Yeah, 1,000 loyal fans.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so it is definitely worth it to get in a spat and to have Elon Musk even have a go at you. If you're somewhere, if you're looking for a platform, if you're looking for more profile, someone like Owen Jones, who is a UK, he's kind of a very strong left-wing commentator. It would suit him hugely to get into a spat with somebody like Elon Musk.
Boost his profile.
Yeah, it suits somebody. I'm trying to think of a right-wing equivalent of Owen Jones. Maybe Nigel Farage. I'm not sure that Owen Jones would appreciate the comparison. Not Tommy Robinson. He's way further to the right. But someone like Nigel Farage, it suits him to get into a spat with somebody, I don't know who the left of centre equivalent of Elon Musk would be. Maybe it might be someone like Hillary Clinton, for example, someone like that. Although that might be unfair to Hillary Clinton, but you see where I'm going with this. For Keir Starmer, I don't know if it suits him. Certainly not on X. He is bigger fish to fry. He's the Prime Minister of a country. He's actually more important than Elon Musk in most ways.
Right. Yeah. And it's a sort of Joe Biden-Trump debate format. It's like it's only really going to suit one person.
That's right. That's right.
Scenario.
So I don't think it suits people. Increasingly, and this is, I think, the point of this episode, I'm not sure it suits Musk, though, either. So what has Elon Musk gotten out of, this crusade that he's been on of the last 18 months over race in particular? He's obsessed with this attack on whiteness. He keeps tweeting about it.
Race and migration as well.
Race, migration, threat to civilization. I suppose you could say that his whole Mars thing shows that he does have an interest in the future of civilization. But the way he has parlayed that in here on Earth in terms of threat to civilization being represented by immigration is really, really hurting his image. And that's not just me saying that. We now have figures. So if you look at the finances of X depends almost entirely on advertising revenue. Its whole paid for blue tick thing has been a disaster. They make buttons from that. And if you see a blue tick, overwhelmingly that's, somebody who's very right of center or trying to sell crypto or a scammer or a very small handful of people who I would trust or rate who have blue ticks. So it's overwhelmingly advertising, and the advertising revenues have collapsed. So this is why X is suing companies right now. Last week, Linda Yaccarino announced that the company would sue big companies for not advertising.
What is the premise there? Like, is there any more to it than them just suing for not advertising? Or were they originally advertising and then they withdrew midway through a contract?
They were originally advertising, and then Elon Musk bought it, and then Elon Musk started both himself personally to spew extreme stuff. Don't forget the post he apologized for, where he described as quote unquote the actual truth in response to another post which had alleged that Jewish people in the US were in favor of non-white immigration so they could replace white people. That's what Elon Musk responded to as being the actual truth. Now, he did apologize for that post, and he did delete that post. But a lot of other stuff that he has posted has been fairly close to that level of tone. And advertisers don't want to go anywhere near that. He is by far the biggest account on Twitter. He's 190 million followers. You place an ad on X, there's a decent chance it's going to appear either beside one of his posts or beside one of his the posts of people who he amplifies, which are even worse than that. Now, that's when they stopped advertising. So Twitter in 2021, I think its annual revenue was around $4.5 billion. It was something around that figure. By last year, it's a private company, so we don't have the exact figures, but it's more than halved. The company itself says that it has been hit. Elon Musk himself said that it had been hit by up to 60%, and it hasn't improved since then. And it looks like it's still going downhill. Now, what happened then with the lawsuit? Linda Yaccarino and Musk. Linda Yaccarino is desperate to try and make some sort of impression. She left a fairly good job in NBC to come and be CEO of Twitter, or of X. And I'm sure the gig was spend 12 to 18, 24 months here, don't burn the place down, and you will have been a CEO at a major company, and then you get a good job. Instead, what's happened is the place is burned down financially. It's an absolute mess financially, and it is almost entirely because of Elon Musk's.
And she's a figure of parody now.
She's an absolute figure of parody.
Like a captive.
Yeah, like a captive. The Daily Show, which is a US satirical comedy show, did a parody video of her own video where she was explaining why X was taking the lawsuit against the advertisers. And around her neck in the parody, they had a little chain and it had "Help Me." And you had to really squint and look in close to see it. But there's an awful lot of jokes around the idea of blink twice if you need help, Linda.
Right.
But what the lawsuit was that Linda Yaccarino, desperate to try and retrieve something, claims that she has uncovered enough proof or evidence that some big advertisers agreed among themselves, or conspired is the word that she uses, to not advertise on X. And she's saying that this is anti-competitive behavior. And she's saying that this hurts not only her own company X, but also hurts the future of freedom of speech for X's users. And it's an absolute desperation plea. There's almost nobody who's credible who believes that it has a hope of succeeding. Now, it did score one notch of a victory because the organization, it's against a couple of big advertisers, including Unilever, Mars, and others. It's including the WFA, which is a giant international advertising organization, the World Forum of Advertisers. Can't remember what it stands for. And then there was another organization called GARM and that was something I'll have to look up the acronym, but that was a sub body which was made up of some advertisers, and that body has since said that it will cease operation. So X is claiming that as a victory, okay? But that's just like, it's like a community association.
Right.
They're not going to get any money out of it. The bottom line here.
Those are powerful enemies, though. Unilever is just...
I mean, the bottom line here is that Elon Musk went on stage a year ago and told advertisers to go fuck themselves. Now they've stopped advertising, and he's suing them to try and get them to advertise again. I mean, it's just absurd.
There's no... surely there's no precedent for it, or, in law at all, that there's no hope in heaven.
It's like the Irish Independent. Somehow, having me as a columnist, having written some snarky or critical column about a company, and them not advertising with the Irish Independent, and then us trying to sue them for not advertising with it. It's absolutely absurd. And what's really fascinating is here's a guy, Elon Musk, who has actually a really good record with Tesla. He took Tesla from being a real bit player into the flagship electric car company. Now, its sales are falling at the moment, but they're still way ahead of where they were 5 or 6 years ago. So he's done great work there. He's done unbelievable work with SpaceX. That's a miracle, what he's done there. And he will be remembered for that no matter what happens. But he has made such a dog's dinner of X. Financially, it is by far the worst example we've ever seen of a big social media company that, whose future looked so guaranteed and had such a unique space. And he's now essentially helping Meta build up an alternative in Threads. Threads at the moment is growing by about 10 to 20 million users a month, purely because people can't take the crap that's going on X anymore.
But how many, people have you heard that you encountered that go, well, he was, people didn't believe him before, with X or, with Tesla or with SpaceX. And then, they sort of give him that sort of billionaire benefit of the doubt.
Far fewer than before.
Yeah.
Elon Musk does deserve the benefit of doubt when it comes to entrepreneurial issues. He does. He's proven it. And he has very strong backers. That's why his own company's shareholders voted for him to get that $56 billion package about 6 weeks ago related to the growth in the market capitalization of Tesla. And there was a court doubt over how that was arrived at. So they had another vote 6-8 weeks ago, and it passed. And so his shareholders like him. His shareholders, Tesla shareholders, believe he's doing a good job. He has made some of them very rich. At the moment, Tesla has more than, it's roughly halved in value over the last year. And that's not entirely to do with his behavior at X, because electric cars are having a tough time at the moment, as we have covered many times on this podcast. But Tesla has a double whammy at the moment. It's suffering what the electric car industry is suffering, and it is also now probably starting to suffer from one half of the political spectrum, at least, deciding we don't like this guy, we think he's damaging our society, and we don't want to support him financially. And by the way, there are loads of other electric cars out there.
Yeah. And it strikes me as both SpaceX and Tesla are products, and they're engineering feats, and they're, they're very much not dealing with human beings, as in they will have humans in them and everything. I understand that, but that it's, X relates more to interactions with humans and how how you're coming off in a room.
Which Elon Musk really isn't as good at as he is with cars and spacecraft. So even on the engineering front, if you look at what X was promising last year in terms of the new features, because X was not just going to be a social media platform. It was going to be the thing. It was going to be the everything app. It was going to be a super app. You were going to be able to do everything that Revolut can do and more. You were going to be able to do all your banking on X. Remember this? Remember these promises? It was going to be a video channel, a huge new podcast and video channel. Remember that? Absolute down in flames. It was going to do all these other things. And from an engineering point of view and a product development view, hardly any of them have come about. It has been technically and from an engineering point of view a flop since Elon Musk took it over. Every month or so, he will repost a kind of an inexact or vague figure about traffic to X without specifying exactly where it's coming from, who the people are. They won't release meaningful financial figures because it's been a disaster, most likely. And the company, on its financial performance, is now, it's just shocking what he's done to it.
But I will say, journalistically, if I even something not incendiary or like the riots in England, if for the Olympics, for example, if I want the quickest result, I'll go to X straight away and look at trending, and it's a case of when I open my feed, almost covering the first post because I know it's going to be someone getting punched in the face or something violent. But then when I find the source, it's very quick. Yeah,
there's no question that X still has that position in the social media world, in the news world. X's users, and I'm one of them, will not give it up quickly because it provides a service that few of the others do. Now, Threads is starting to get closer, but Threads has an overarching policy of not being a news app. They don't want it to be a news app. And that, that X will be a news app. So therefore, if you want to find out about something happening quickly, if there's an incident, if there's a violent incident, if there's a major sports thing, if there's some announcement, it's still X that has that captured. And but that was there long before Elon Musk came near. Right. So that was what Twitter was. And that's what made it sticky. And even though it was only making, marginal profits or it was just about breaking even, it still had that long-term guarantee of being relevant. It still has a long-term future, I think, because there still isn't anything that has really stolen its juice. But the more I think about it, the more that's just luck, because everything that Elon Musk has brought to X, almost everything, has made it worse, both functionally and from a content point of view. And now I think it's starting to really hurt. Anyway, I think we've ranted. I've ranted long enough. JJ Clark, producer of this show, thank you very much for joining me for another therapy session of me and Elon Musk. Gav Hennessy was on sound, and you've been listening to or watching The Big Tech Show with me, Adrian Weckler. We'll talk to you soon.